And basically,
Yeah. This week I was a teenager, but Banda. Where were you born? Israel?
where to go? Looks like where to go.
Was it?
Then I'm here.
Ah, wow. Fancy. On Satan.
Krishna, I will take one cookie and then we go to Mama. Have you got your book?
Yes, I
Oh, amazing.
Jack is 19 and no.
Hello.
What?
Jack is 19 and no.
I did.
Seriously.
Yes.
But it's a bit lemony, but it passed.
Yeah, this is what I was going to say. Anything.
I didn't measure, I just.
Hey, good evening, Rabbi Yossi.
Hello, Rina and Yael.
Yeah, I just did.
Hello.
Please.
How are you? How was your week?
Yeah, just came back from A&E with Aria.
Oh, very. What happened?
Potentially ACL.
Oh,
Football. Yeah.
Where'd you go to St. George's?
No, St. Heliers.
St. Heliers is quieter, right? It's the quicker A&E, the wait time, I think, right?
Yeah, it's much better.
We went there once and we were in and out within like 2 hours. It was like a miracle.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to share.
Okay, I'm gonna take the cup.
Let's look like it's the same.
עם האופניים, אני זוכר איך להגיע לכל המקומות, כן? עם אוטו, חד סטרי, אין מצב.
ההורים שלך.
כן, פעם לפה כשהייתי בן 15 וחצי.
Hello.
בגלל שהיה מפלאה של משפחה, ואני עברנו...
Hello, sir. Good evening. How are you? Good. Nice to see you. Yes, good.
קצת מאחור.
Hello, how are you? Good. Nice to meet you. Hi.
Okay.
Wow.
Right. Good evening, everyone. Nice to have everyone here. And unfortunately, Samuel is he's still in Israel, right? Odi.
Yeah, Odi and Dole.
Odi, yeah, they're still stuck in Israel. And Monique and Andrew, they're going to be watching online from Zoom because not feeling too well. So it's good we have all the in person and Zoom, all the different dimensions. Right. So we're going to start today. Very fascinating topic, which could be some people, maybe even decided to join this course only because you're interested in this topic of reincarnation, might be. I suspect for some of you, it's quite an interesting and fascinating topic to know what's the Jewish approach to reincarnation, because it's not necessarily the same. Well, first of all, we have to figure out if there is reincarnation in Jewish belief, but then also to know if there is it the same or different as the way it's explained in other beliefs and traditions, like in the Eastern, the Hinduism, the way they speak about reincarnation. But I'll give you a bit of a teaser. It's not the same, as everything in Judaism is different. So we're going to begin. Welcome, Alexandra. Nice to have you. We're going to begin.
Hello.
Hi. On page 174. So last week we spoke about the afterlife, and this week actually we're combining the current life and the afterlife, how they actually come together through the idea of reincarnation. But just before we begin, to sort of have a starting point, to know where we're starting from, because in order to discuss any sort of topic, you have to know where's the starting point. So the opening question is how do you feel about reincarnation? Does it Do you feel positively, negatively? Do you have any specific feelings about it in one way or another? Anyone? Gil-
Can we define?
Oh, yes. Gilgul Nishamot, where the soul, after passes away, comes back down into another body. Yeah. So the same soul coming back down into a different body. That's what reincarnation means.
Wow.
In Hebrew, it's called Gilgul. Oh, you didn't know what?
No, I thought of something completely different.
What were you thinking?
What's gonna happen בעולם הבא?
This was last week.
Okay.
So last week we spoke about heaven and hell. What happens after, or Olam Haba, as you say? Olam Haba actually has two meanings. There's different opinions. Olam Haba either means the afterlife for the soul, or it can mean, as anyone, you know, the concept of Tchiyat HaMetim, of resurrection of the dead. So that's also another meaning of Olam Haba. Yes. So that's what we're gonna touch on next week, the last week of the course. So Olam Haba means the world to come. So the question is the world to come meaning the world that the soul goes to after it passes away up in heaven, the spiritual world, or does the world to come meaning the future when the bodies will be resurrected, not just the soul, but the bodies will also be resurrected? And the answer is that actually Olam Haba means both. There's different opinions which one, when it says, last week we quoted from the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, in Ethics of a Father, it says, Kol Yisrael yesh lam chelek l'olam haba, that every Jewish person has a portion in the world to come. This is a very famous Jewish foundational quote, that every Jewish person has the portion in the world to come. So the question is, what does that mean? Does it mean heaven, or does it mean resurrection of the dead? The answer is it means both. But now that was last week, and next week, this week we're talking about reincarnation, which means that the souls, after they go up, after they pass away, they come back down in different bodies, which means potentially that our lives, our souls that we have now, may have been alive in previous generations in other bodies, and maybe after we pass away, they might go into other. So that's what resurrection is. So with that introduction, what do you feel about it, resurrection? What are your thoughts or feelings? Some people are disturbed by the idea. Some people are like the idea because it sort of gives us a concept of immortality in a certain way.
I just feel it's a contradiction of the first one, I think it was.
Yeah.
God picks up that soul of the sheriff and says, you've been made to go in this particular body. There is no argument here.
Very good question. Okay. And in the same vein, it would seem like it's a contradiction to everything we learned last week, is that after the soul finishes its journey in this world, it goes up to heaven. Doesn't come back down into another body. Which one is correct? How can they both be correct, right? Okay, good. Fine, but that's more a philosophical question. But what I'm talking about more feelings. How do you feel about the idea that maybe I lived in a different life?
Not scared at all, like open to all
Open to, yeah.
possibilities, because you're not going to know for real. You hear and read and study, and
Okay.
so lots of possibilities.
But you want to know for real.
Hmm?
But you want to know for real, right?
Not
They
really.
don't care. Okay.
No, I thought about it a lot when I was younger youth. I used to talk to my mum about it a lot and find out perspectives, because my mum was from India as well, so she was Indian.
Yes.
From there, so they lived like multiple places. So it was good to get, and she lived in Israel when before I was born. So I just wanted to get the views of her for different cultures, different parts of the world, and yeah. But she never told me exactly what to think.
So, many people travel to India to discover themselves. It's a known thing, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, as Chabad, we set up centers in India because people go there to discover themselves, and they find themselves. The real discovering yourself is inside.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's what to learn from all cultures. Of course, that's a beautiful thing. But ultimately, the real discovery is inside oneself. And in the Jewish, we have all the rich ideas. There's people, like someone mentioned last week, like, how come they don't teach this in Hebrew school? Like, how come when I was a kid, they didn't teach us all this stuff? But the truth is that we actually have a lot of rich, things in Judaism. It's just that for some reason, they weren't necessarily taught to us when we were children. So that's why we're coming here to have a second shot at, well?
One thing, God created also the Hindus, the
Yes.
Chinese, so he also created them as well.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah. So there's what they contribute. Yeah, they have what to contribute, and there's what to learn from everyone. Yeah, absolutely. So on one hand, there's like a fascination because you know the notion that we have is that if you look at the vastness of the universe and the fact that we live for X amount of years, so if you look in the bigger picture, like what is my life? It's like almost like a speck in the universe of the whole you know, I don't know whether it's thousands or millions, however many years you want to see the world is, where our life is like insignificant. It's like a fleck, you know, it's a flicker in the whole big vastness. But if you think about reincarnation, it sort of counters that because it means that not only does our soul live on forever, as we spoke in previous weeks, but even our body, in a certain sense. In other words, the idea of immortality doesn't only apply to our soul, even in a sense, our life here in this world, there is a sense of immortality because we live more than once. Our soul comes back into another body to live again and again. So maybe that gives us a sort of a sense of immortality. On the other hand, it can be very disturbing thinking that maybe who am I? Who is the real I? Am I recycled? I'm recycled goods or maybe even damaged goods. I'm carrying, not only do I have all my own issues to sort out, but I have all the, you know, previous lives, all of their sort of issues that I need to fix and sort out. And who is the real me? What's my personality? Do I have like somebody else? Maybe I have a demon inside of me, or like who is? So it could be a very weird feeling to think about that our lives might not have started when we were born, but there was pre-existed in other lives. You know, maybe 100 years ago, maybe 500 years ago, and what life that, you know, the previous me lived. It could be a bit, you know, strange to think about that. So today we're going to be hopefully being able to sort of answer or alleviate some of those disturbances by getting a more accurate and complete idea of what reincarnation is in Jewish belief. So again, to start with, you have to know what's our starting point, what we currently our ideas and beliefs are, and then we'll be able to come back at the end and see if they're true or false. So if you turn to page 175, exercise 5.1, we're gonna go through a true or false exercise, and feel free to just, you could tell me or shout out to say whether you think these statements are true or false. Number one, belief in reincarnation is basic to Judaism.
No idea.
Number two, and I'm not going to answer now, I want to hear what everyone says, and then we'll come back to this at the end. Number two, in the Jewish view, reincarnation means that a soul that inhabited one body returns to inhabit another. Okay? A human soul can be reincarnated in non-human entities such as an animal or a plant.
False.
What do you think?
False.
Okay. For a reincarnated soul, and fish maybe, yeah. A reincarnated soul does not have its own identity, but shares its identity with someone who lived in a previous lifetime. False. Yeah, anyone else? And does anyone argue with that?
Wait, sort of
Meaning our identity and personality is really not our own, but it's shared with a previous lifetime.
That can't be.
Okay, so it seems like everyone says false to that one. A soul is reincarnated as a penalty for sins that it committed in a prior life.
You forgot number 5.
Oh, sorry. The purpose of doing good in one's current lifetime is to be reincarnated as a person of higher status. So it's almost like a reward that if you do good, you'll be reincarnated in a person of higher status, like in a righteous person or a special
It
person.
doesn't feel right. I don't
Doesn't
know
feel.
what the answer is, but it doesn't feel right.
Okay. A soul is reincarnated as a penalty for sins that it committed in a prior life.
What was it of 5? Yeah.
Same answer. It doesn't feel right.
Doesn't feel right, okay.
Contradicts what we learned last time,
Why?
because the soul goes through that kind of purification and then
Of Gehenna.
Gehenna and then goes to heaven and then.
So meaning if there's any punishment, that would be the punishment.
So they're already kind of pure. According to the last discussion, so if they come back, can't be another punishment. It must just be because I've got something to do here.
Double jeopardy.
Okay. And finally, the last one, most souls today are reincarnations. It means most of us here today, alive today, are reincarnations.
Well, if reincarnation is right, then simple math said yes.
Okay. Either yes or no. I mean, maybe it's something that only happens very rarely, but the question is, are most of us alive today reincarnated souls? It means that we've all been here before, been alive in this world before.
Because of the souls, because
Yeah. How much stock of souls are there in the inventory?
Warehouse.
thoughts from somebody?
What?
Can we have 2 or 3 or?
Oh, okay. So we will answer your question. How many souls are there? And can you have 2 or 3 souls?
The mass
What, per
question. So
body?
people died in the
Or-
past and we know as many as today.
I don't
Second,
understand that. How could
in
that
the
be
past, we
possible?
know more than, I think there are less than 20 million Jewish people alive today, and I guess more than 20 million Jewish people died since.
Since forever.
And all the ones who,
Since Jewish people
I've
started.
forgotten.
Since the first Jewish person is Abraham Avinu.
Did you not say that?
So how could multiple souls
Number of Jewish
explain
songs, the
that?
number of letters in the Torah.
If more than 20
Yes,
people,
we will get to that.
more than 20 million Jewish
Which is how many?
souls died
Yeah.
until today, right?
Yes.
And we are less than
600,000.
But I don't think we are
600,000.
because
Yeah.
especially if you like I know around here you'll find so many people are Jewish but they've had to hide it.
Okay, so
because
we're gonna
it's
answer that.
happened in the
We'll get to
war.
that.
So you think there are more
Okay.
Jewish people about.
Aren't like me.
Okay.
I'm proud my whole life. I've never had a problem until
There are
recently.
more than
That's only because I
20
put myself
million,
there.
but
So
not-
you know, there's
we don't know.
got to be at least 4 times that you know, of the people I meet and all, you know, just someone else the other day. She's like, I didn't realise that I was Jewish,
Wonder.
and my grandmother was a Holocaust survivor, but we had to hide it, and now she's out proud, and you know, and there's a lot of people like that.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I'm just gonna attempt to move my thing so that the people on Zoom can see everyone in the room.
About 14 people came to me like this.
Okay, 14.
14.
So,
So
so
yes.
my estimate of 4 times, it's going to
And
be.
nobody
from
knew I'm
one-
Jewish. Nobody even knew.
But you do. There's a Jewish radar thing.
I don't know if that helps.
Yeah.
I just want to make that the
Yeah, definitely.
people on the Zoom can
Right.
see some of the
Away.
people in the room.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
And a look.
I don't know if that's better. Is that, do you prefer this? You can see some of the people? Okay.
People that didn't even knew, like the first time that I even saw their face.
Together.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Something's happening. What a Belgian
Take it and
sport,
go
really.
take it.
That's what it says.
All right, so we'll carry on, otherwise we'll be here all night.
Yeah.
So the first thing we're going to lay the foundation is that reincarnation is a Jewish belief. So yes, it is a Jewish belief. And how do we know? Well, one of the places we know is because there is a custom to say the Shema. Well, it's actually a mitzvah to say the Shema twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. As it says, you know, in the famous text of Shema, B'shach b'cha u'v'kumecha, when you go to sleep and when you wake up. So now there is, in the prayer book, it's been extended sort of over the centuries, from the basic text of Shema, there is sort of now, there's a couple pages that's in the prayer book of the text that we say before we go to sleep, as sort of the Shema before we go to sleep. And over here in text 1, we have a very fascinating sort of way of closing the day. It's like a spiritual inventory of the day where you know, instead of just going to sleep, you know, over the day, we've done things and, you know, we want to, you know, people have all these sort of rituals or things that they do before they go to sleep. Some people will do gratitudes or maybe meditate or different things to calm yourself down and to sort of reflect. Some people will do journaling, you know, all sorts of things. But in the Jewish belief, there is a very fascinating prayer that we do as part of the Shema before we go to sleep, which is part of like the spiritual ritual. And part of that is forgiving everyone who's done anything wrong to me today. Very beautiful thing to do, to sort of forgive everyone before we go to sleep, so we don't go to sleep harboring any resentments. But the text that's used is actually very fascinating. So let's start. Deborah, would you like to read text 1?
Master of the universe, I hereby forgive anyone who has angered or vexed me or sinned against me, either physically or financially. against my honour or anything else that is mine, whether accidentally or intentionally, inadvertently or deliberately, by speech or by deed, in this carnation or in any other.
So boom, that's it. So we mention here, and we're not going to get into the whole topic as to why would I need to forgive someone that's harmed me in a previous lifetime. Like, we're not going into the ethics over here, but we're just using it as sort of the factual reference in the prayer book that we all have. And this doesn't matter whether you're Sephardi or Ashkenaz or this, that, it's in all of them. That the concept that there is, whether someone's harmed me in this incarnation or in a previous one, so we're forgiving everyone that's done any bad things. So we see the concept of reincarnation. Now, in order to really, the concept of reincarnation, or in Hebrew it's called Gilgul, or Gilgul Neshamot. Gilgul means to roll, but it means that the souls sort of roll back and come back into another body. But it's really, the only place where this is really explained is in the Kabbalah. So if you read the Talmud, it's not really mentioned, it's not really spoken about, because the Talmud is the revealed part of the Torah, but the whole concept of Gilgul really is only expounded and explained in the Kabbalah, in the mystical parts of the Torah.
Which is the Zohar.
Which is based on the Zohar, but we're going to see soon that we're going to have a few texts from, have anyone heard of the Arizal?
Which?
The Arizal. The Arizal was a very, very famous and important Kabbalist who lived in the 1500s in the city of...
Same as the Ari HaKadosh?
Yeah, the same as Ari HaKadosh, yeah. So his name was Isaac Luria, and he actually passed away at the age of 38, very young, but he was one of the greatest masters of Kabbalah, explaining the Zohar. So the Zohar is probably the oldest text that we have from Kabbalah, but the Arizal, he sort of brought it to a whole new level in terms of explaining the Kabbalah, and that became known as the Lurianic Kabbalah, that line of Kabbalah of philosophy. And he had many students. His famous student was called Reb Chaim Vital, he transcribed all of his teachers' teachings. So the Arizal himself didn't write down his teachings. He taught it to his students, and his main student, Reb Chaim Vital, wrote them down. And we have today all the writings of the Arizal through his students' writing. And he wrote, there's a whole book called Shar HaGilgulim, which is basically a full book dedicated to this concept of reincarnation. So we're going to be basically learning based on that.
What's the Kashur LaBaal Shem Tov?
So the Baal Shem Tov, he came later after the Arizal, and he basically took the teachings of Kabbalah and he took it a step further, and he founded the idea of Chassidut, which is kind of like another...
Hasidic movement. Is that all connected to Kabbalah?
So basically, it's all branched off. So you had Kabbalah, you had the Arizal, and then, like you said, the Arizal, one of his, again, later, a couple hundred years later, came the Baal Shem Tov, and
a couple of hundred,
like 200 years later,
Oh,
after the
wow.
Arizal,
Okay.
yeah.
I thought it was one of the students.
No, he wasn't a direct student of the
Okay.
Baal Shem, of the Arizal.
So,
The Arizal lived in Israel, the Baal Shem Tov lived in Russia.
okay.
So 200 years later, found Baal Shem Tov, and then what?
And the Baal Shem Tov was the founder of Chassidut. So all the Hasidic movements they all stem from the Baal Shem Tov. That's sort of a little bit of a diversion from this topic. I don't want to go into the whole thing, but all the Hasidic movements are different groups and sects, etc., which are all different branches from the Baal Shem Tov. Had a student called the Maggid of Mezrich, Dov Ber of Mezrich. He had 120 students. From them came I don't know if you know today, you've got Vishnitz and you've got this and that.
I know the name.
Sounds right. So all of those are basically their groups, which they go back a couple hundred years to a student of the Maggid of Mezrich. One of them was the Alter Rebbe, the Shneur Zalman of Liadi, and he founded Chabad. So Chabad is one of the groups that came from the Baal Shem Tov, which came from, so it is a branch of Kabbalah, if you want to say it that way. Okay, with that aside, before we talk about the dynamics and the mechanism of reincarnation, we have to first address the question which Cyril and Avi, both of you, asked in the beginning, which is, how does reincarnation fit? How does that not contradict with what we learned previously, that the soul, like you said, we learned in the beginning that the soul, after it finishes its life, it goes to heaven. So how does that work? Does it go to heaven? Or you asked another question about...
Well, it starts with the soul is being...
The soul is being created and being told, you go into this body.
Especially for that.
Right, correct. So how does that work? So we have to understand the history of our souls. Okay?
Okay.
So we have to understand the history of our souls. So if the soul is reincarnated, when does it experience Gan Eden or Gehenna that we learned about last week? So the history of our souls. So this is now, we're going to start learning from Reb Chaim Vital on page 2, on page 177, text 2. Reb Chaim Vital, in the introduction to Shar HaGilgulim, and again, if you want to see, it's interesting, you have on the side, it tells you a little bit, on the side, it tells you a short biography of who are these authors of these texts. So this is Reb Chaim Vital, who, as I mentioned, he was the main student of the Arizal, who transcribed all of his works. And this is from the book Shar HaGilgulim, which is all about Gilgulim. So, Miriam, do you want to read text 2?
So it all began with one master soul, the soul of Adam, which included all future souls. Subsequently, this master soul passed on to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and was then divided among the 12 tribes. Afterwards, the soul was further partitioned among the 70 souls, the descendants of Jacob that accompanied him to Egypt, and eventually among the 600,000 souls who left Egypt. Well,
So very interesting. Adam, he was not only the first person, but his soul was the sort of foundational soul. In his soul, God, as remember, God blew the soul through his nostrils. That soul encompassed the entirety of all the future souls of all of humanity, but specifically the Jewish people, but all of humanity as well.
So can you go on that, on humanity?
Yes.
Because this is particularly not
Yes.
secular humanity.
Yes. So for the context of what we're going to be learning about in this session, what?
והוא האדם הראשון כולל כולם.
Yeah. So what we're going to be speaking about reincarnation specifically as it relates to Jewish people, but this does apply also in general. There is reincarnation to non-Jewish people, and the soul of Adam he was the father of humankind. So his soul includes the soul of all of humanity, but specifically the soul of the Jewish people came from Adam. So in other words, all of humankind also come from Adam, but what we're saying here is that his godly soul, specifically after him, he had children and grandchildren. There were many generations, and they all had souls as well, but they were not Jewish souls. But his Jewish soul went to Abraham. So between him and Abraham, there was a gap. There was, all those people had souls. But the Jewish soul went to Abraham, and then it went to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Then it went to the 12, and then from there it's segmented. So it started off as a single soul, then it segmented into 12, then into 70, and then it split into 600,000. And that was the key number. According to the Kabbalah, the number 600,000 isn't just a coincidence that's just how many Jews happen to have been at Mount Sinai. So the number of Jews who left Egypt was the number of 600,000, and those were the people who stood by Mount Sinai and became the Jewish nation and received the Torah. That number isn't just happens to be 600,000, but it's a very significant number because from that point onwards, that is the amount of Jewish souls that there are in existence. So you asked before, how many are there in stock? You have your answer. The answer is 600,000.
So
Now, how does that work? If there's more?
does Gilgul Meshamot happens for non-Jewish people?
Yes.
Okay.
But we're not going to be talking about that. It's not as we're not going to be talking about that. We're not going to be explaining how it works or what's the purpose. It's different. We're going to be speaking specifically how it works for Jewish people.
so how do you cater for those who are from a Jewish mother and a non-Jewish dad? Or
They're Jewish. 100% Jewish.
Sorry,
There's no-
a Jewish dad and a non-Jewish mother.
Judaism goes after the mother.
So if they are half Jew, they are
There's no
not
such thing
Jew.
as a half a Jew. Either you're Jewish or you're not Jewish. There's no such thing as a half a Jew.
600. Either you are
So
inside
even if the dad is
600,000 or you.
Jewish, it's
You have Jewish blood, and the person can convert if they want, but they're not halachically Jewish if their dad is Jewish. So it goes. So you see how the tree is sort of growing. It starts with Adam, then it goes from 1 to 3 to 12 to 70 to 600,000. And those are the root souls. So from now on, we're going to call them the root souls because right now there are a lot more than 600,000 Jews. So how does it work? We only have a half a soul, But the answer is like Cyril, you can help us out with this. The concept where you have where like a certain stem cell can be sort of duplicated, right, into a lot more. So you have these 600,000 root souls, and then all the souls that came after those 600,000, they are basically like child. It's like sparks from a fire. They come from one of the root souls. Okay, but we'll get into it more soon. So it's like you have a single cell that divides and breaks up into many parts, and each one becomes sort of an organism of its own. Now, do you want to continue to text 3? So we're going back to Shara Gilgulim, yeah.
Furthermore,
Yes.
you must know that every person must fulfill all the 613 mitzvot. If a soul does not fulfill all 613 mitzvot in action, speech, and thought, it must be reincarnated until it completes them all.
So what, again, we'll call it the Chaim Vitala, the Arizal is saying is that, again, what's the purpose or the reason of reincarnation? 600,000 souls stood by Mount Sinai, and they were charged with a mission from God.
Oh, yeah, it's what.
To perfect the world, to make the world a better place. Ultimately, it's interesting, God created the world imperfect. He could have created the world as a perfect world, but it says that he created the world with imperfections because he wanted that we, humans, should be his partners in creation. He didn't want that we should just be recipients. Like he gives us a perfect world and we come, there's nothing to do. He wanted us to be a partner in creation, and therefore, it says, if you know the text we say in Kiddush, Asher bara Elokim la'asot, that God created the world to do. What does it mean? The Talmud says, la'asot means litaken, to fix. Our job is to fix the world. From there is the famous term that many of you know, tikkun olam. Tikkun olam, to fix the world. This is the purpose. Now, how do we do it? Through each of these 600,000 root souls got a personal, unique mission to fulfill all of the 613 mitzvot. When all 600,000, now in addition to that, each of these souls were given also what's called chelek ba'olam, a portion in the world to fix, which means if you take the whole entire world and you divide it into 600,000 parts, each soul has a specific element in the world, which only that soul is responsible, uniquely responsible to complete, elevate, and fix spiritually. So, and when the soul does that, the soul itself also becomes rectified and has an elevation and completed its task. When all 600,000 souls do that, then the world is complete, is fully fixed, and that's when the Messianic age of Mashiach will come. When all 600,000 souls complete their mission, which means that each one has to do all 613 of the mitzvot and fix and elevate their portion of the world. Now, what happens if a soul didn't manage to complete all of the mitzvot, or if it transgressed one of the...
All the mitzvot once.
What do you mean?
Well, you got a lifetime.
Sorry, I missed the question.
Got those mitzvot. Do you need to follow the mitzvot throughout your lifetime
Get my chart on.
to achieve the goal, or do you just have to do each one of them once to achieve the goal?
It's a tricky
It's a tricky question, and the answer is it depends. We'll get to that in a minute. You'll see. You'll see.
You get slapped for this question.
But yeah, now
I kept Shabbat once.
Back in the days.
I think the understanding of this is that it has to complete the mitzvot in its complete way. So
all the time.
I think that's what it would mean. But there is a difference between a soul who's done it partially versus not at all. And that's what we're going to see soon. So that is the purpose of reincarnation. Reincarnation is when the soul didn't complete its mission,
Mm.
it comes back to have a second chance. That's the reason.
Regardless whether it's gone to Gan Eden or to Gehenna.
Very good. So, okay, so we will get to that soon. Well, I'll just answer you now. Basically, the soul, each soul is comprised of 613 sparks. Okay? Each spark corresponds to one of the 613 mitzvot. So when a person finishes their life, let's go back to the times of Mount Sinai. Let's say
When a person done 600.
so what happens is when a person passes away, the sparks that he elevated, those sparks go up to heaven. And the other sparks that were not completed and fixed, they have to come back down into another lifetime to be fixed. But what happens is, it doesn't mean that the next soul only has a partial soul, because, Cyril, please, if you can give us the more scientific or explanation, but it's, in other words, what happens is the soul, it recreates into a full new soul that itself also has 613 sparks, but only some of them are from the original root soul, and that is the main mission of this second lifetime that the person has to complete. Every person has to still do all 613 commandments, even if in my previous lifetime I've already completed some of them. But the main purpose for me to elevate my soul, it boils down to the ones that my soul has never done before. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'll try to.
It's like going up levels in a game. You've got
Kind of, yeah. So you have 600. You start off with. You
You've
start
got
off with
to check it again.
613 sparks, which need to be elevated. And each lifetime, so the first generation, few, if any, managed to complete all of the commandments. So they have to come back again. But each time, the amount of sparks that need to be elevated gets less and less, because you start off with 613, and let's say you knock off 5. You did 5 of them. So then you have another 608 that have to be elevated. So it comes back again. And then it does another 20. And it keeps coming down, or has to keep coming down until it completes all of them.
It's like pressing the button.
What happens then?
When it completes it,
Yeah.
I said. So when
Not 600, a single one.
so again, each spark that gets, so after a lifetime, the sparks that were elevated go up to heaven
And stay there.
and stay there. And only the other sparks that weren't rectified, they basically come and they recreate into a new soul that has a new identity, that has all 613 sparks, but some of them are from the original root one and some of them are created from it, right? What are the scientific terms for like something that's, when you have a...
Well, I mean, it seems like a replication.
Right, it's like, it's created, it's like when you have a flame and you light a candle from another candle. Right now you have 2 candles and you light another one. So it started off with having only 600,000. Now you've got millions, right? How many Jews are there now? What's the current count?
9 million.
Right?
You're talking about like creating.
And millions of
and you're saying what's the word?
You see that there are 20 million Jewish people estimated alive
Yes,
today.
exactly. Yeah.
And if you multiply 600,000 by 613, right? It's about 367 million.
Yeah, no. So again, each soul has 613 parts to it. By the way, it says that we have 248 limbs in our body. It's called in Hebrew Ramach Evarim. Ramach is Reish Mem Ches. You know Gematria? Gematria. Reish is 200, Mem is 40, Ches is 8. 248 limbs in the body. Now, from the 613 commandments, there's 248 positive and 365 negative. Positive is like the things we have to do. Keep Shabbat, put on tefillin. The don't is the things we can't do. Don't mix milk and meat. So it says that when we do the 248 positive commandments, then it rectifies our 248 limbs of our body and also the corresponding sparks of our soul. Everything is connected. So both our body and our soul get elevated when we fulfill the mission of our soul's sparks. Okay? So now, again, when we pass away, the sparks that were rectified go up to heaven, and the other ones come back down, but they become recreated into a new soul, and they come back down into another body.
Cloned?
Like cloned, not
Well, I mean, the difference.
not cloned,
It's not a physical object, but
because cloning is like a duplicate. Over here, we're not saying it's duplicate. It's the same.
Cloning takes
Yeah.
a model or a formula and duplicates it.
So now we're not talking about duplicating. We're talking about the very same spark comes back down, but it generates sort of a full new entity, not the same. So in other words, this will answer another question as well.
each mixture is unique.
Yes, each soul is unique.
Because you've got like some of the old and there's newly created
Correct.
replicas.
And that answers the question also. I'm jumping a bit ahead, but next week we're going to talk about the resurrection of the dead. When Mashiach comes, the bodies will come up. So the question is, if you had one soul that was reincarnated in 10 different bodies, which body will it come? But now we answer that question, because really it's not exactly the same soul. Each soul is unique, and each body has its own unique soul. Okay, so what is the mission of the soul? Number one, to complete all 613 mitzvot. But that's not it. There's more to the job. So the first thing is it has to reveal God's presence, fulfill the 613 commandments, and through that we rectify and elevate both the body and the soul. Like I mentioned before, the 248 limbs of the body get also elevated when we do the 248 positive commandments. But now continues Reb Chaim Vital. This is continuing from the previous text of the Shara Gilgulim in text 4. Who are we up to? Avi?
Four.
You
should also realize that each individual must study all four of the Torah's layers, which are referred to by the acronym
Pardes.
Pardes. Okay. When it comes into the Hebrew word.
Yeah, that's why it's in the italics.
These are Shat, Remez, Drash, and
Sod.
Literal illusion,
Exegetic.
and mystical. It is necessary for a soul to be reincarnated repeatedly until it completes the one.
So we're saying now, we have actually a few parts to the mission. The first part is do all 613 commandments. Second part, each soul has to study the Torah in all four layers of the Torah. The Torah has 4 layers. So to understand what are these 4 layers of the Torah, in Hebrew they're called Pardes, which means an orchard. But Pardes is an acronym. It stands for the 4 layers of the Torah, which are Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. So to understand what are these 4 layers of the Torah, we have a beautiful video that will explain what are the 4 layers of the Torah. And that is the second pillar of the mission that our soul has to complete. So the reincarnation allows the soul must study all 4 layers of the Torah.
Human authors express themselves in their works, both directly and subtly, sometimes intentionally and always subconsciously. When we read a text, we can choose either to read the lines or to engage in more intricate analysis and read between the lines. The divine author of the Torah did something similar, but to an infinitely greater degree. God expressed himself in the text in multiple ways all at once, directly as well as subtly, with plenty of insinuation and a vast hidden layer of the divine subconscious. And he then instructed us to excavate it all. Jewish tradition separates these layers of understanding into 4 categories. The first is Pshat, direct intention, which is derived by examining context and syntax. For example, the Torah begins with the words, Bereshis bara Elokim, es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. On the plainest level of Torah understanding, this is a straightforward statement of what happened at the beginning of time. But the simple meaning is not always easy to clarify. Many biblical commentators, most notably Rabbi Shlomo Yitzhaki, the 11th century French scholar known universally as Rashi, devoted their efforts to clarifying the straightforward meaning of the often mysterious biblical texts. Our second layer of understanding is remez, allusion. This refers to subtle communications that are encoded in the text. They can be uncovered using methods such as the numerical values of the Hebrew letters, the acronyms of words and phrases, or unusually sized letters in the Torah scroll. For example, the Torah's first two words, Bereshis bara, in the beginning, God created, carry the numerical value of 1116. That's the identical value of the phrase Barosh Hashanah Nivra. It was created on Rosh Hashanah. We are thereby informed that Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of creation. Our third layer of understanding is drush, interpretive. Our sages extrapolate a vast corpus of ideas and instruction from the Torah's text through methods such as textual comparison, sequencing analysis, and homiletical interpretation. For example, from a sequencing perspective, the Torah begins with the wrong beginning. It describes creation, a narrative that is seemingly secondary to the Torah's primary function as a book of guidance that tells us how God expects us to act on a daily basis. The Torah should have dived directly into the nitty-gritty of the laws. On the interpretive level, however, the Torah first describes creation to tackle a major hurdle to Torah observance. The majority of Torah laws rely on the Jewish nation owning and settling the land of Israel. We were instructed to conquer the land and never relinquish our claim of ownership over it. But such a radical claim to a territory is bound to provoke opposition. Who gives us the right to take possession of a land and claim it as our eternal heritage? The Torah, therefore, begins with creation, clarifying that God is the creator of all territories, and he has the right to permanently bequeath a specific parcel to a particular people. It then records the history of God doing precisely that with the Jewish people. With this switch in sequence, the Torah supplies the Jews with the response God expects them to provide all who accuse them of land theft and occupation. The fourth layer of understanding is sod, hidden meaning. This refers to the deeply mystical messages that float behind every phrase and letter in the Torah. For example, the word Bereshis can be split perfectly into two words, bara, shis, meaning he created six. God first formed the six emotive divine attributes, from chesed, kindness, through yesod, attachment, as described in Jewish mysticism. God then used these six attributes to create the actual universe. So there you have a sampling of the four layers of understanding that can be found in the Torah's very first words. Beyond this, a vast ocean of knowledge is contained in these same words. And beyond that stretches the infinite vastness of wisdom contained in the rest of the Torah's close to 80,000 words.
Let's say good night. Much kindness on
Not bad.
them. Any questions?
How is Bereshit? The end is sacred.
Bereshit, if you take the word Bereshit, you split it into it, it's the bara shit. Shit in Aramaic means shesh, six. It's in Aramaic, yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
So this is fascinating how you have all these layers. And if you look behind you, that's what the Talmud is actually. Most of the Talmud is the third of those four categories, drush, where they will extrapolate and expound and use 13 principles of derivation, of ways to derive and figure out what the law is in different things. We write, as we learned in another course all about it, very fascinating. But these are so now we're saying is that every soul part of our mission is number one, keep the 600 to fulfill all the 613 commandments. Number two, each soul has to study the Torah on all of these 4 levels at least once. But what's actually interesting is that according to Kabbalah, there is not only one interpretation on each of these 4 levels, but there are many, many. That's why we find many different opinions. If you study the Talmud, you have many, many different opinions. There's a lot of ways. In fact, there's 600,000 interpretations of each verse in the Torah, according to the Kabbalah. And which means each soul corresponds to a unique perspective on the entire Torah. Isn't that fascinating? Each person has their own. That's why that's why Judaism is very very pro the idea of different people having discussions and debates and arguments, because it's not a bad thing. They're all true. There's a concept that's called in Hebrew, it says Eilu va'ilu divrei Elokim chayim, which means when you have 2 people arguing, both of them are true, which reminds me of a good joke. These are the four levels. So it reminds me of a good joke. So a husband and a wife had an argument. So they come to the rabbi to solve their disagreement. So first, the husband comes and he lays out his opinion. He's like, this and this and this, and he gives all the proof and the evidence, and that's why he thinks his opinion or whatever it was about is right. So the rabbi listens to everything he says, and he's like, yeah, you're right. Then the wife, she says, yeah, but on the other hand, I have evidence that he's wrong because this and this and that, and she lays out all of her evidence. So the rabbi listens to everything she says, and he's like, yeah, you're right. So they both say, well, how can we both be right? So he says, you're also right. You're right about that too. You're all right. Everything is right. And what's the idea? That is that every perspective has some truth in it. I think this is something which is important in life as well, is that there's so many different perspectives and opinions, and there's a kernel of truth in everything. Even in a lie, it says that a lie has to have a kernel of truth in order to stand, otherwise it will fall down, right? So this is a very fascinating thing that it says, we say in the prayer, before we start the prayer, you may know there's a famous song, right? That may the temple be rebuilt. So this is text 5a. Whose turn is it? I think it's Cyril, yes.
She's also coming to the biggest lie now about the new Haman, Tucker Carlson, and the Beit HaMikdash.
Yes, so Cyril, do you want to read 5a?
Yeah, may it be your will, our God, the God of our fathers, that the holy temple be rebuilt speedily in our days, and grant us our portion in your Torah.
So this is something we say in the prayer every day, that we pray that the temple be rebuilt in Jerusalem when Mashiach comes. And together with that, we're saying, grant us our portion in your Torah. What's that mean, grant us our portion in your Torah? Does anybody have any idea what that means?
Just kind of.
What does it mean, our portion in your Torah?
What we've
said
done
earlier
out of the
about these
600.
600 stalls showing
Yes.
the world, so they show you the Torah in the same way.
Right. Meaning to say that we're praying, it's a prayer to Hashem that He should give us the inspiration in our mind to be able to come up with our unique perspective of the Torah, because ultimately every person has their approach in the Torah that no one else. Take this and go to the.
My letter is the 500,000 letter.
What? Your letter is the 500, yeah? And that's actually, yeah, so part of what we have to do is we need to study the whole Torah on all 4 layers. And the third thing we have to do is each person or each soul has to, in Hebrew it's called lichadesh, to come up with a novel idea, to come up with something with their perspective of the Torah, to be able to understand it and learn it and have that inspirations, so to say.
To be any lawyer to be able to.
No, every person has the ability. That's the idea. It's powerful. It's powerful stuff.
The Torah is chaya v'noshemet, like every generation,
Exactly.
the Torah is changes.
Yes.
Like יש גם מנהגים, אבל how to explain it? Like the majority of rabbi dictates how the Torah leads, right?
Yes.
And changes in every generation like this, right?
In certain ways.
Of course, in certain
Yeah.
ways, but if most rabbi will decide now that you can eat חלב ובשר, if all rabbis, all Am Israel will decide right now that we can eat חלב ובשר,
Then you can't
It's
still,
not?
no,
if all rabbis, if every Jewish, no?
No.
Contradict.
you cannot contradict something that was written in the
זה מה
Torah.
שיהיה כשהמשיח יבוא.
All right, okay, so that's already another question for another time.
אבל המשיח יבוא כשכולם יעשו את אותו דבר גם.
Who says that that will be when Mashiach comes?
What the hell do I do?
That what?
Say it once.
That what?
Huh?
Say that what?
When the Mashiach come, you can eat like
It says that when Mashiach comes, the chazir will become kosher.
Chazir, that's it.
The pig will become kosher when Mashiach comes. That's one thing, but it doesn't mean that everything else is because the pig will become rectified. Okay. So now each soul,
half kosher, right? Is
Yes,
one
but-
of the
yes, because it has split hooves, but it doesn't chew its cuts. So each soul must uncover its unique portion of the Torah. So the mission of the soul is three things. Number one, complete all 613 mitzvot. Number two, study all 4 layers of the Torah. And number 3, reveal its unique portion in the Torah. That's the mission of the soul. And when all souls do that, then the world is fully, the mission is completed. And then that's when Mashiach comes. Now, that is explaining the purpose of reincarnation. When a soul didn't manage to do all of these things, it has to come back, the sparks, the parts of the soul that didn't complete the rectification, they come back down into a new soul. So now,
With the credit of all the mitzvot that we start.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So he doesn't start from scratch with the 613. With the
He has to
all-
do all 613 again.
Again.
Yes.
The credit is not like.
You have the credit. You have the credit, not credit in the sense that you don't have to do it because you've done it in a previous lifetime. But credit is you have all the good merits from the previous lifetime. Your soul is accumulated. But every soul, because each soul, when it's born, like you said, Avi, we had the medrash that before the baby's born, God sends the soul and says, this soul is coming down into that body. That soul is regenerated, it has 613 sparks of its own. So it has to do all of them, even the ones that it done previously. But the sparks that were from the root soul, that is your main mission. So we have to do, throughout our lifetime, we do millions and millions of actions, of deeds. But ultimately, it boils down to only a handful of things that is the make or break it of the whole reason why we were born, to do those things. Okay? So now we're going, well, we'll get to that soon.
when we do these things, our
You
time
could-
in this בעולם הזה will end, like we will pass away and we will move
We-
to that world.
Well, we spoke about that in the first week, that we have a set amount of time of years that we're destined to live, and it's the exact amount that God decided that our unique soul needs for our mission. So yes,
So everything is ידוע מראש.
yeah, and obviously it's a contradiction because there's free choice and God knows everything. So yeah, that's a famous question. So now we're going to explain the method of reincarnation, which I explained before verbally, but now we're going to read it from the Chaim Vital, how reincarnation actually works. So let's go to someone from the Zoom. Yael, do you want to read text 6?
Just a second. So, although we've this one?
Yes.
Okay. Although we've stated in numerous passages of this treatise that a specific individual soul was reincarnated in a particular person, and it was subsequently reincarnated in another specific individual, and so on, do not misread this as implying that the original soul itself is reincarnated repeatedly. Rather, each human soul branches out into innumerable roots. Every root contains an infinite quantity of soul sparks. With each subsequent reincarnation, a number of these sparks are rectified, and they ascend to enjoy the reward of heaven and dwell in the particular strata of Gan Eden that are appropriate for them. However, those soul sparks that were not rectified are reincarnated to provide further opportunity for rectification.
So this is what we explained before. So now you see inside in the text, the idea that the sparks that were rectified go up to Gan Eden, to heaven, and the sparks that were not rectified, in other words, because the soul in the previous lifetime didn't manage to fulfill one of the mitzvot, or transgressed, or didn't study one of the sections of the Torah, then those specific sparks come back down, and they generate a brand new soul, but only the sparks that were not rectified come down into the new soul, and then there's other sparks, because the sparks, it's all spiritual, everything that I'm saying. So it really could be, each spark could be infinite. Really, it can generate into infinite sparks, because it's spiritual. It's not, a physical thing. But that basically answers the question of, we are not, who is the real I? We're not recycled. So recycling is, you take something, use it, and then you just take it and use it again and use it again. That's not what we are. Each soul is unique.
It's like Maimonides' concept. There's the concept of the triangle, and then there's infinite instances of triangles that are physically in the world.
Correct, right. Yes. Now, so you mentioned before that there is, sorry, Cyril, you mentioned that there's Gehenim. Last week we spoke about that. We spoke about that when the soul, that it gets, the parts of the soul that were spiritually damaged through transgressing have to be purified through the process of Gehenim, which is purification. So how does that work? In other words, when do we choose Gehenim and when do we choose reincarnation? So the rabbis say that it depends sort of what level, how badly damaged, so to say, the spark is. If it's, a minor damage, then it can be purified in Gehenim, in hell. But if it's severely damaged, then it has to be amputated, meaning it has to come back into this world to have a whole nother chance. So this is, I think, what you asked before about what happens if we do a mitzvah some of the time, but not all the time, or what happens if we do a mitzvah partially, but not completely. So then in those instances, it's enough for the purification of Gehenim to help. But if a mitzvah was not rectified at all, then it has to come back down. Does that make sense?
Doesn't accept it, but
Seriously, future to sort all of this out.
Yeah, indeed.
There's no way out.
This is practically the Matrix.
Don't worry, Yossi's going to put us on the right path.
So we have the rectified sparks. Those are the mitzvahs that were properly observed. And the unrectified sparks are the positive mitzvahs, either the positive mitzvahs that were not performed, or the Torah violations. So the parts that were rectified, they go up to Gan Eden, and the other parts, they become the foundation spark of a new soul. Now, there's also a concept of partial reincarnation and also non-human reincarnation. Those are, shall we say, these are the outliers. These are not the normal process, but they do happen. Partial reincarnation. Yeah, partial reincarnation is in Hebrew called ibur, which means impregnancy, which means, what does that mean? Ibur, yeah, like pregnancy. Because in a normal reincarnation, the soul, the spark that comes back down becomes the soul of the human being. Whereas over here, sometimes this is what you asked before, could you have more than one spark, more than one soul?
Yeah.
In one body, right? So this is the idea. It's a very weird thing, and it happens in two instances where basically I have Yossi, my soul, which most likely is a Gilgul, is a reincarnation. But sometimes, in addition to my main soul, there will be a second soul that will come into my body, but temporarily, not from the moment I'm born till the moment I die, but it will come temporarily, and it will be for one of two reasons. Either it will be to Certain mitzvot, I was waiting for someone to ask, but certain mitzvot are circumstantial or not possible for everyone to fulfill. For example, there's a mitzvah of, believe it or not, divorce is a mitzvah, the process of how to divorce. But what if someone never divorces, right? Or if someone passes away and doesn't have children, there's a mitzvah in the Torah, a very fascinating thing, that if they have a brother who is not married, are you familiar with this concept? Has to marry. We don't do it nowadays. It's called yibum. So if a man passes away and doesn't have children, if he has a brother who is not married, the brother should marry his widow, and that is called yibum. It's a mitzvah. We don't do this nowadays, but if he doesn't want, he's not forced to, only if he wants to. If he doesn't want to, then there is a ritual, what's called chalitza, where you have to take off his shoe and spit and say, I don't want, and then he's exempt.
So why we don't do it anymore?
Why we don't do yibum?
This mitzvah, if it's one of the
No, we do. No, you don't have to do. You have two choices. Either you could marry, or if you don't want to marry, then you. So we do the second one. We do. So what we do is, if a person nowadays, if a person passes away, they're not children, and they have a brother who's not married, they have to go to the Beis Din, and they will do the chalitza, which is taking a shoe, making a declaration, and by doing that, you're exempt. So these are very rare. What?
Name and shame.
Yes. Now, there's also certain commandments that only apply to a king, only apply to a Kohen, right? Or a Levi, only apply in the times of the temple. There's so many. So what happens if a person doesn't do one of these mitzvot? So there's different methods, but one of them is that it will come as the soul doesn't have to have the sort of a full-fledged reincarnation, rather it will temporarily come into the light, into the body of someone else to be able to do that mitzvah. Or the other reason why this will happen, a partial reincarnation, will be to help, to give someone an extra spiritual boost. So sometimes like a soul of a tzaddik or a special person will come temporarily into someone to give them a spiritual boost. But this is called partial reincarnation. In Hebrew, it's called ibur, because just like when a baby is pregnant in the mother's stomach, it's like a life within a life. The baby is inside the mother, so it's like sort of a human inside a human. So over here, you have a soul that comes into another soul. That's the idea, basically. Then there's non-human reincarnation. So let's read a little bit in the text to explain what are these. So if I can ask Rina, if you could read
7b.
7b, yeah.
The soul experiences ibur for one of two reasons. A, the impregnated soul comes to an individual for its own sake. In its previous life, it failed to perform a particular mitzvah and was therefore left lacking. This was the kind of mitzvah that was impossible to perform under the conditions of that lifetime, such as a mitzvah of yibum, chalitash.
That's what I mentioned before, yeah.
Yeah. It is therefore not obligated to engage in full-scale incarnation, described earlier in this treatise. For soul impregnation is sufficient. The impregnated soul comes solely to assist an individual to bring a person additional merit or to guide an individual in matters of Torah and mitzvot. In this case, the impregnated soul lacks nothing for itself. Do you want me to go to text 8 as well?
No, we'll get to that in a moment,
Okay.
but I want to just actually preface to that. So now we're going to talk about the non-human reincarnation. There is a major difference between reincarnation in Judaism and in Eastern religions. In Eastern religions, the concept of reincarnation is that souls just keep coming endlessly and aimlessly. They just go without any particular reason or without any particular destination and randomly, right? Whereas over here, we're saying that everything is very intentional. Like you said, you need a computer to manage all of this, right? It's very intentional and it's with a specific purpose. But there is a limit. And another, how many times can a soul keep going? How many chances can we have for the game till it's game over, right? And the answer is 4. 4 chances. But it doesn't mean it's game over after 4 chances. It just means that the strategy has to shift a little bit. If the soul comes 4 times, so really 3 reincarnations, 4 lifetimes, including the first lifetime, and 3 more, then after that point, it depends. If it made no progress whatsoever, then it's not working. So then it sort of shifts strategy and something else happens. However, if it made partial progress, then it's okay. It can continue because it's making progress. So this is based on the so now Alexandra.
Oh yeah, I
Would
have
you like
myself
to
on
read-
mute.
Yeah, would you like to read text 8?
Yep. When a human soul comes to the world and becomes soiled by sin in the process, it reincarnates in another body to rectify itself. That second life is its first reincarnation. If it fails to rectify itself during that lifetime, it may return in a second reincarnation. If it again fails to find rectification, it may endure a third reincarnation. After that, however, it is no longer provided opportunities for rectification via reincarnation.
And like I said, the caveat to that is if it made no progress in the rectification.
So, obviously, I mean, logically, you'd expect a reincarnated soul to make some progress. Because
Hopefully.
it's got some credit, so you're talking about someone who will not do anything for this work. All you need is to do one extra and making progress, aren't you?
Yeah, but from this, let's say, just to give you a random example to make this tangible, let's say my soul, the mitzvah that was lacking was the mitzvah of sukkah, eating in the sukkah on the holiday of Sukkot, right? I have no way to know. Well, actually, we'll get to that soon. How can we know? But, as far as I know, we have to do all the mitzvot. But for my soul to have its rectification, that's what it boils down to, because all the other ones that already did, but that's the only one that's left. But if I don't know that, then, what happens if I don't do it?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so now where do we learn this from? It's based on a verse in Job. So you can carry on, Rina, and read the next one.
Once you have to open the sukkah, all is life.
Rina, you can read the next one, text 9.
Sorry.
Carry on.
Okay. Behold, Hashem does all of these twice or thrice with man. The limitation of twice or thrice applies with man, meaning that a human soul is not subsequently reincarnated in a human body. Rather, it is forced to wander the planet until it is reincarnated in an inanimate, vegetative, or animal entity. Then, after it has done its penance, there is hope for its future. For Hashem's endless mercies extend to all of his creatures.
So this is something which is very interesting. So again, if it made no progress after 3 times, so God is saying, look, it's painful for the soul to just keep going and going and going. It's not making progress. So God was like, let me try something else. Instead of carrying on with that, I'm going to reincarnate the soul in a non-human, in an animal or a vegetative, and that will be very painful for the soul. And by going through that painful process, that will provide the soul with its ultimate pure rectification. Thank you.
If you get reincarnated as a cow, you could say that you've kept kosher because you're only kosher.
So, yeah. So they say a joke that there was 2 Jewish people who basically promised each other that whoever dies first will come afterwards and tell them in a dream, tell the other one that's still alive, what's the afterlife, what it's like. So Yankel, he passes away first, and after he passes away, so his friend is waiting for him to come in his dream, and lo and behold, he comes to him in a dream and he says, life is amazing. He said, I can eat whatever I want, and I'm surrounded by mountains and pasture, and I can sleep when I want and eat when I want. So his friend's like, wow, it sounds like heaven. So he's like, no, I'm a cow in Montana. So that is,
Jewish sense of humor.
yeah. So the two scenarios that you have, partial reincarnation, either temporary guest soul or it's for the guest soul's sake. Meaning if it's coming, either it's coming for itself because it didn't do a mitzvah, but it's a mitzvah that it didn't have the opportunity to do, or it's coming to help the second person. Whereas non-human reincarnation is after 3 unsuccessful reincarnations. It's a form of punishment, but it's not punishment for the sake of punishment. It's punishment because it's painful. So the way it's described is, just to explain, when that happens, it doesn't mean that that soul is the soul of the animal. Because animal, as we learned before, animal souls have different human souls. We said in lesson 1, right? The whole human soul is completely different than an animal soul. So the animal has its own animal soul, but over here it's almost like it's imprisoned. The human soul is imprisoned and not able to express itself in the human way because it's limited to the body of an animal, which is very painful for the soul. But by doing that, it gets its rectification. So now the last part of today's session is the obvious question. Okay, so now that we know all that, well, how do I know what my soul's has to do to fulfill its rectification? Is there any book that's going to tell me the secret as what I need to do? There's actually a story that I heard from my father-in-law, Rabbi Dubov. He was one time when he was a student, when he was a young man, he was at a Farbringen of the Rebbe. The Rebbe used to give Farbringen, as you see on the videos, give discourses, and so he was standing there with thousands of Hasidim listening to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe, at one point, the Rebbe asked a question. The Rebbe said, it's known that a soul comes down to this world and lives, 70 or 80 or however many years with a specific purpose. And the purpose is to do a favor to another person, or to do some act of kindness or some good deed, which is, that one deed is the sole purpose of why this soul came down to this world. And then the Rebbe said, how can we know which deed is that deed? That's the whole purpose of why my soul came down into this world. And then he paused and it was quiet in the room. And the way my Rabbi Dubov explains, he says he was waiting there like, no, tell me the answer. I want to know the answer. And then after a pause, the Rebbe says, we don't know. And because we don't know, we need to treat every deed that we have, every action that we do, as if the possibility, maybe this is the whole, reason why I'm alive, is maybe to do this thing. So if we have that mindset with everything we do, it would be a different story. So now we're going to address that question. Okay, how do we know? How do we know what our mission is? So text 10, let's go back round. So Deborah, text 10.
It is impossible to deduce or intuit whether one possesses a reincarnated soul or not, unless one is the recipient of a mystical communication in this regard. You may wonder how then we will know the purpose for which we entered this world, which mitzvah we must scrupulously perform, or which transgression we must especially avoid. The answers are naturally ingrained in us. We experience natural affinity and long to perform a certain mitzvah when mitzvah is critical to our present incarnation, or our inclination strives especially hard to entice us to commit a particular sin, for it is the very same sin in which we blundered during our previous life.
So it's impossible for any one of us to feel or to know anything about our previous incarnations. So it's like we don't have any memories, not in our conscious or our subconscious, none whatsoever of our previous lifetimes. And the reason is because Kabbalistically, again, our soul is the spiritual spark. It's nothing to do with our personality, our memories, or any other part of us. We are complete, unique individuals, and there's no way to know anything about our previous lifetime. there's another reason that's given as well as to why we don't have any memories from the previous lifetimes is because otherwise everyone would beat each other up. And last lifetime you owed me £100, so I'm going to get you back. So in order for the chaos not to erupt. Okay, so how do we know? So over here it gives you two secrets. The first secret is if you feel a particular passion towards something, that can be an idea that maybe that's something that is your soul's calling, right?
Like a clue.
Yeah, that could be a clue that that's your soul's calling. Or it could be the opposite. If you have a particular challenge, like something that you just, for some reason, I can't stand this particular thing. Everything else is fine, but that I can't stand. It could be it's because your soul knows how important it is, and therefore evil inclination is trying to fight against it to try to stop you. So any of those two things, either you feel a specific drive or passion or towards something, or you feel a particular challenge towards something, those can be two ways to know what might be your soul's mission. And then there's a third one as well, which is, let's just go quickly to the third one on text 12. So Miriam.
From the moment that God instructed our forefather Abraham, go from your land, Genesis 12:1, following which is stated, Abraham kept traveling further southward. The mystical process of the rectification of divine sparks was launched. Subsequently, by decree of divine providence, individuals travel to the locations in which the divine sparks, but these specific individuals must rectify await their redemption. Faintly, individuals with spiritual vision perceive the locations in which their divine sparks await their engagement, and they take the initiative to journey to those locations. The rest of us are left in the hands of the primary cause behind all causes and the ultimate reason behind all reasons. God orchestrated countless apparent causes and circumstances to bring specific individuals to the locations in which their predestined service of rectification is required.
This is really fascinating.
Well,
in Hebrew, it's the term called hashgacha pratit or hashgacha elyona. Familiar with the concept? Everything in English, it means everything that happens is divine providence, which means this is something which is really, if you pay attention to this, it's fascinating. I see it in my own life, and if you just think about it, you'll see it happening in your own life. Where like basically God leads you to the place where you're meant to be. You don't know why you end up in the place. Like, how did I was born in Chicago and now I'm here in West Byfleet. Who would have thought, right? Somehow it's called the divine intelligence leads a person to the place where they're meant to be, to fulfill a particular task. So we said in the beginning that every soul has what's called chelko ba'olam, their portion in the world that they have to go, and their unique mission that they have to do. So God sort of orchestrates the world. He's like the chess master who's there, and he sees the whole chessboard, and he moves all the pieces in a way that will lead each person to the place where they need to be at the time that they need to be to do their mission. It's very fascinating, and if you think about it, you see these happen in micro ways in our life. Like I took a wrong detour and ended up, and then I bumped into a person who was a Jew who never knew before, and like had I not made that mistake and taken that exit, I wouldn't have met the person, and it happens all the time.
Yeah.
But over here we're saying also is that God leads a person to the circumstances that their soul is destined to be able to do their mission. So to sum it up, there are three things that we could know. So if you look at the figure 5.2, you have this image here. Number one, our strengths and passions. Number two, our weaknesses and struggles. And number three, our circumstances. All of those three things lead a person to have some sort of idea or clue as to what our mission in this world might be. Text 11 is a beautiful letter from the Rebbe writing to a person who was struggling with his marriage. It's called Shalom Bayit, peace in the home. He's having a very hard time, and the Rebbe writes to him a beautiful letter, and he explains to him that sometimes when you have a particular challenge, it could be that's really what your mission is. So the Rebbe was telling him, telling him like, if you feel like there's so much opposition that like in this area it's just so difficult and it's impossible, and you feel like it's very hard, maybe that's a sign that that's what's most important to you. All the other good things you do, I give charity, I do this, I do that, but I'm mean to my spouse. Maybe all of the other things is irrelevant because it's so easy for you to do, but that is what's really important for you. So that was the message the Rebbe was giving to that particular person in that case. So now, with that in mind, we've come to the meditation section of the lesson.
Today's reflection is going to help us try to relate to the idea that our souls came to the world this time around for a special purpose. A mitzvah, a good act that has special value in this lifetime. Now, how can we know such a thing? To a great extent, we can't. However, there's a way that we can catch a glimpse into what is important for the soul in this lifetime. And that is by way of a metaphor which we will now visualize. Picture in your mind's eye, you are leading an army out to battle. If the militaristic imagery is not to your liking, you can imagine a game of chess. The same idea applies. You're leading your army out to battle, and you begin to become aware that your opponent, your enemy, is focused on striking you in one particular spot. Now, it hadn't occurred to you that this spot has importance, but from the fact that the enemy keeps focusing on it, keeps going after it, we begin to realize that it must have strategic importance to the enemy. As you're imagining this, shift now and think about your life and think about a mitzvah or a good deed that is inordinately difficult for you. And by inordinately, what I mean is this. We all have mitzvahs that are harder and easier for all of us. But then there are mitzvahs that by all rights should be easy. It shouldn't be so challenging, and for some inexplicable reason, we just keep having resistance in that area. Why are we having inexplicably more resistance in that area? Why? Because it has that much more strategic importance, and therefore all things in the universe being counterbalanced, our Maker has allowed a special resistance, a special challenge to give us pushback in that one area that we most need to overcome. So imagine, connect to yourself, think of yourself, think of that area, that mitzvah that's the hardest for you, the one that keeps on challenging you. And now imagine it, rather than as something that you're frustrated about, imagine it as your most precious asset. So precious that the enemy is specifically focusing on it. Let's take a moment to try to think of that mitzvah that is the most difficult, and to now see it as that mitzvah which in this lifetime is apparently the most important and most impactful. We'll take a moment now to envision this, to connect to this feeling. Feel yourself being empowered, knowing that this mitzvah has so much power, so much influence, and that is where the resistance is coming from.
Okay. So now we're going to circle back. If you go back in your books to remember the true and false we did in the beginning? Let's see if we made any progress over here. Let's see if our answers were correct. So the first question, belief in reincarnation is basic to Judaism. True or false?
True.
So this is a trick question.
It's false, but it's true in the Jewish meaning of it, but it's false because other people believe in reincarnation.
Yes, but the reason why, I'll tell you, it's a trick question and it's false, not because it's not important, because of the word basic. Last week, I don't know if you remember, I mentioned there are 13 principles of Jewish faith. And we explained that the 13 principles, believing in God, believing that God has no body. One of them was believing in schar v'onesh, in reward and punishment, believing in resurrection of the dead. There's 13. This is not technically one of them, so it's not technically basic. Basic means it's foundational, that without that, nothing else would exist or make sense. So the word basic is a tricky one, so it's not technically basic, but it is definitely important. Okay, number 2, in Jewish view, reincarnation means that a soul that inhabited a body once returns to inhabit another. True or false?
Well, false, because it's not the same soul.
Exactly. So it's not exactly the same soul. It's not the same soul coming back again and again. It's a new soul with part of the sparks of the previous one, but not all of them. So it's not exactly the same soul coming back. It's part of the same soul. So also not 100% true. 3, a human soul can be reincarnated in a non-human entity. So as we saw, that is correct. A reincarnated soul does not have its own identity, but shares its identity with someone else. No, that's not correct. Because each soul has its own identity. Just because it has the sparks of the previous soul, it doesn't mean that it's recycled goods or shares the personality or the individuality of the other soul. So that's not correct. 5, the purpose of doing good in one's current lifetime is to be reincarnated as a person of higher status in a future reincarnation. Not at all. So that's not the idea. 6, a soul is reincarnated as a penalty for sins committed in a prior life. Not penalty. Penalty is the wrong word. It's not a penalty. It's a rectification. And most souls today are reincarnations.
But also, for sins, it's not for sins, it's for mitzvot not being fulfilled.
Which is a sin.
Okay, so not fulfilling a mitzvah is a sin.
Yeah. Avera. Well, there's the do's and the don'ts. So the don'ts are called averot, which are sins. I guess the Hebrew translation.
The do ones. If you don't do the do ones, is that a sin?
Yeah, but it's a different type of sin. There's the lack of doing, and then there's the doing something wrong. They have 2 different types of blemishes on the soul. One of them causes an active blemish on the soul, and one of them is just the soul is lacking its rectification. It's 2 different types of sins. So now the last, so now we have a better understanding of the thing. Now, the last part over here is basically explaining it's kind of a side point, but there's a certain benefits that we can have in our mental health and well-being, shifting gears a little bit, by knowing that this whole concept that we have souls and we are part of a bigger picture, we are reincarnated and it comes for a reason, coming back again to our day-to-day life, we wake up and we have challenges and we go about our life, knowing everything that we learned today, besides for it being important and fascinating, it also can help us in many ways. So why? Because it gives us a sense, if you just think about it, it's actually amazing that every soul has a unique mission that nobody else can do. So imagine how special, how that makes me feel. It's not just, there's millions of people, and if I'm here today and gone tomorrow, does it make any difference to the world? Does anyone really care? Well, the answer is yes, God cares, because God is like the master strategist of this whole, he has this master plan, and it's like a CEO of a massive company that has thousands and thousands of employees, and each person plays a role in the bigger picture. That if that receptionist by the desk doesn't pick up the phone, it has a ripple effect in the whole company. Every person plays a role, and God he sees the whole bigger picture, and he sees how each person, there's different departments and there's different sub departments and employees and all everyone plays a role in the big picture. So you have over here two very interesting things that on one hand, I have a unique mission that nobody else has and no one else can do. And at the same time, I'm part of something bigger. We are all here to play a role that only all of us together can complete the full mission. When Mashiach will come is when all of the souls fulfill their individual mission. So each have our individual mission, but then ultimately only by all of us doing it, so we're all sort of dependent on each other. So we have to have a sense of teamwork and working together. That's why. So all of these things are very interesting. So, this is an idea that Viktor Frankl, which, many of you I'm sure heard of, Man's Search for Meaning, and he lived through the Holocaust, and he developed this idea called logotherapy, which is basically that the ultimate purpose of life is for a person to realize that they have, or the deepest part of a person is the part of him that can identify that I have a reason to live, and that's what helped him through the concentration camps, right? Knowing that there's a purpose to life.
Do all Jewish believe in Mashiach or just the Kabbalistic?
Yeah, everyone, of course. It's one of the 13 principles of faith of the Rambam. Yeah, of course. So here's a quote from Viktor Frankl. He says, "Everyone has his own specific vocation and mission in life to carry out a concrete assignment which demands fulfillment. Therein he cannot be replaced, nor can his life be repeated. Thus, everyone's task is as unique as his specific opportunity to implement it." So, knowing that we're part of a bigger mission and that we have a purpose and that we were brought here into this world to do our little part in that mission, number one, it can enhance our personal identity by providing a unique purpose. So unique meaning something that's unique to you that no one else has or can do. And it can give us, so our mission is sort of magnified by the previous good deeds. So you have all the previous good deeds. You're not just here. There's a famous parable that says that we're like a midget on the shoulders of giants. So that's what it says about our generation, which is the last generation before Mashiach comes. We're like the midget, like we're nothing compared to the big rabbis and sages and the big righteous people. But we have the whole accumulated history of humanity, and only good prevail. Like only good is everlasting, where the bad is not everlasting. So it's up to us. We're the last ones, and we're like the midget on the shoulder giants. So we have all the good deeds of our previous incarnations that are there rooting for us and helping us in our mission, because ultimately they need it too. And this is the pathway to realizing God's master plan. So we have a part to help in God's master plan and provide a role within the general human mission. So knowing that we have a personal mission, first of all, that can give us determination to attain our goal, which means is if you, many of the people that studied personal growth, one of the things that sort of was a common denominator was that a person who has a goal is much more likely to attain it versus someone who doesn't have a goal. If a person just going, let's say a person, I need to, make a certain amount of money. Let's just say a person every day wakes up and he has that goal. I'm going to, buy a house. If you have that goal, you're more likely to achieve it, because then that will motivate you to overcome hardships, or when you're faced with challenges, you're going to fight stronger because you have that goal. So compare everything what we learned in this lesson compared to someone who doesn't, who's just living, why am I here? I don't know, maybe it's a mistake, so I ask my parents why I'm here, but we're here because we have a mission. Just knowing that itself gives us the strength to be able to, deal with obstacles and challenges, in a stronger way. Number two, so to overcome obstacles, and then also a changed attitude towards our circumstances. So this means that sometimes we're put in circumstances where things that are out of our control change the course of our lifetime. Sometimes there are things that are in our control, and we have to overcome them, but then there are things that are out of our control. You have people who go through tragedies and things happen and they go through suffering and their whole, life changes. So there are two ways to approach that. Either is victimhood, just to, approach it as a victim, or, there's countless stories, I'm sure many of you know, of people who've been through different tragedies and they use that as a way to like really overcome the tragedy and help other people in a greater way because of the tragedy or the suffering that they had. Not just tragedy, it's also suffering. People go through, it could be loss or this or that, or certain circumstances that we go through. I mean, we can use that to help other people or to just to have greater purpose in life from the hardships that we had. So that's another benefit that we can have.
The Jewish people had a lot of it.
Yes, so finding the potential within suffering. So these are all the things that when we know that, we're not just here by mistake, we're here because we're on a mission, we have a specific purpose, our soul came down for a very specific purpose that God is sort of relying on us to do. And our previous incarnations are also relying on us to do. That can give us the strength to really go through all of life's challenges with greater strength and clarity and purpose.
So I'm saying that every Jewish person in the world, alive in the world, as an incarnation, or
So-
some of them pure new souls?
Very good question. So most
One has a new pure.
So it says that most of the souls of at post-temple era, so in the past 2,000 years, most of the souls, not all, but most, are reincarnations. There are a few souls that are sort of original. It's known that the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya, the first Shnei Zalman, the Baal Shem Tov said that he was a new soul, but that's a very sort of unique circumstance. Most of us are reincarnated. But it says when all of our souls are rectified and Mashiach comes, babies will be born, they will then be new souls again. So that's it. So that's the end of the lesson, and now we will do the summary of the lesson. Any questions just before we have the summary?
I'm really struggling with the concept of the 4 layers
Of the Torah.
That must be fulfilled
Yeah.
by all.
Yeah.
And
Not fulfilled, need to be.
No, but it kind of goes into practicality and maybe political of the idea of the really good Jew is someone who just study, while the opposite to that will be those really good Jew is really one who is doing good deeds by creating stuff, by physically doing other things, like protecting other people,
Sure.
like being active.
Yeah, so this doesn't mean.
So where is the thought, the belief that the Hasidic or the Kabbalah is looking at? Is the best thing in the world is study 24 hours?
No, no one said that.
Or
No one said that the purpose of our soul is to study our whole entire life, to stay in yeshiva and study all day for our whole life. That's not at all what we're saying here. We go through, it's important to set aside times to study. So for example, it says, you should every person should have a study session like we're having here. It could be, an hour a day, an hour a week, but every person should have set times, fixed times. It's called kviyut ditim of studying Torah, but it doesn't mean that we have to study all day. On the contrary, the whole purpose is to go out into the world and rectify the world. Actually, what we're learning today actually proves the opposite, that the purpose is we have a place in the world, somewhere in Montana, that's waiting for me to come there and do something and do a good deed or meet someone. If you're not doing business and going out and doing things and, rectifying the world, our job isn't to sit and stay in the yeshiva all life and study Torah. But it's important to have a time that we study Torah. It could be on Shabbat, when we sit and relax once a week, we sit and we study Torah.
That a disagreement with the
Slightly. In other words, well, there's more nuance to it. You're really opening, obviously, a very big question. There's nuance, but there's also different, in the tribes, there was 12 tribes. So from the 12 tribes, there was the tribe of Levi and the tribe of Yisachar. They were the rabbis. They even in Egypt, when all the Jews were slaves, the tribe of Levi, they didn't slave. They studied Torah the whole time. So there are different tribes, meaning to say it's important that as a Jewish nation, we have a bit of everything. So there should be a subsection of people who they are maybe the elite, the spiritual elite who study all day, but it doesn't mean, it's not the same thing as the political Israel, what's happening today about everyone studying in yeshiva all day. the point is there should be some people that study all day. Maybe it's not 20-year-olds, maybe it's 60-year-olds that are already retired. Maybe they're the ones. So I'm not connecting any of this to the political situation of going to the army versus studying yeshiva. But what I am saying is that we don't necessarily say that everybody, the goal is that everybody should stay in yeshiva and study all day. No.
Under Parole, the Levi wasn't enslaved.
Yeah, correct.
Wow. It's like.
So what I'm saying, so just to summarize what I'm saying is a few things. Number one, every person has to have multiple elements. The majority of people were people who go out into the world, and it's important for us to go into Israel. And this is why, the Meraglim, the spies, they didn't want to go into Israel. The reason why they didn't want to go to Israel was because they wanted to stay in the desert where they didn't have to work. They go to in the desert, the food was falling from the sky, and they had the water, everything, the clouds of glory protecting them. And they were able to just study all day and the spiritual elevation. But they knew once they go into Israel, they have to start conquering the land and working. They didn't want it. But God said, no, you're getting punished. That's the wrong thing. You have to go into the world and conquer it. But even then, again, every person has to have a part of their day, a part of their week, a part of their life. There's the idea of Shemitah, where once every 7 years we take a sabbatical. So there's these different layers. We need to basically put into our schedule on a daily, weekly, yearly, or life basis, different times that we study, because it is important to study Torah. But then in addition to that, there's also a subsection of people who they basically study full-time, but that's because they need to guide the people and be the rabbis or whatever it is. But and then, like in the tribes, it was called Yisachar and Zvulun. Yisachar was the one who studied Torah, and Zvulun was the businessman, and they made a deal. They said, I'll study Torah, and you go and do work, and you support me, and my Torah will be your merit as well. So this concept of having different types of Jewish people, where some will go out and work, and some will study Torah. We have to have all of the pillars. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay. So now with that, let's go to
Lesson 5. Where we go again. 1. Adam possessed the Jewish master soul that ultimately branched out into the 600,000 souls that received the Torah at Mount Sinai. All subsequent Jewish souls are offshoots of these soul roots. 2. The 600,000 primary souls were each given a part of the world to perfect through fulfillment of the 613 mitzvot. When a soul accomplishes its mission, it itself also gains rectification and elevation. 3. Every root soul must also study each of the Torah's 4 layers of teaching and uncover its unique part in Torah. 4. Few, if any, of the original souls completed all 613 mitzvot, nor the required study during their original lifetimes. Reincarnation provides souls with additional opportunities to complete their missions and the rectification of the world and themselves. 5. When a person dies, all the refined elements of their soul return to heaven. A new soul, built from the elements that were left unrectified, is then grafted from the stem soul and returned to this world. 6. As a general rule, our souls are reincarnations, but it is impossible to be conscious of or to accurately sense the experiences of our previous lifetimes. 7. Clues to the nature of our soul's unique task in this world can be gleaned from A. Our strengths and passions, B. Our weaknesses and struggles, and C. Our unique life circumstances. 8. The Kabbalistic view of reincarnation does not deny us our personal identity. Each of us is a complete and unique individual who is simultaneously and integrally linked to a far greater reality. Reincarnation ascribes greater importance to our existence and provides each of us a unique role within the overall human mission.
Okay, next week we're going to wrap everything up. Life is shortish. We're going to basically bring everything back to life.
So if I was to summarize and say, okay, I listened to everything. I have a mission. It's part of a bigger, it's another soul. It's part of a big plan. The clue is to reinforce something that I don't like or something that I like very much. I'm gonna go, I'm gonna leave here, I'm gonna say, well, what is it that I like and I didn't like? Okay, I'm gonna find out. And then what? And then I've got to work on that to achieve. For example, I like my life, I'm retired, so I'm gonna continue with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think just keeping this sort of in the back of our minds as we go back into our life, just keep that in mind, and then, you know, things will come up, you know, because these things we don't necessarily have in a moment, you know, we're never going to know for certain. It's only clues. We're never going to know for sure. But, you know, if you keep this in mind, maybe, you know, over the course of time, we'll have more clarity about one of these things. Or maybe you already have the clarity now. If someone wants to share with us, anyone wants to tell us what's
I
your...
don't have. My message is I don't know where to go from there. How
I
to
think
find it.
it's all connected to the third temple. And Haman and Hitler and all the evil,
That's fine.
or every Haman of his generation.